Welcome to Treadmill Trivia, the only true crime workout where the mystery keeps your feet moving. Today, we're stepping into 5 of the most debated cases in modern history. And trust me, the court of public opinion has not rested. Casey Anthony. Some people swear she's 70% guilty. O.J. Simpson, public debate rockets him up to around 85%. Robert Blake sits near 75%. Amanda Knox splits the world at about 40%. And George Zimmerman, many land around 65%. Whether you agree, disagree, or are already yelling at your treadmill display, good. That means your heart rate's up. We've packed these into 25 fast rounds, about 30 minutes. So settle into your stride, stay curious, and let's dive into the cases that still won't let the world make up its mind. Round 1 begins now. Round 1. We're starting with the case that gripped the nation in 2008. What first raised alarm that 2-year-old Kaylee Anthony was missing more than a month after anyone had last seen her? Was it A, a neighbor reported a strange smell coming from the trunk of Casey Anthony's car? B, Casey's mother called 911 after learning Kaylee hadn't been seen for weeks? C, police discovered Kaylee's toys in a nearby field? Or D, a daycare worker filed a missing child report? Clue, a quiet alarm that would grow into a media storm. The answer is B, Casey's mother called 911, setting off one of the most publicized investigations in modern American history. The facts. The 911 call came 31 days after Kaylee was last seen and included the haunting line, "It smells like there's been a dead body in the car." When officers questioned Casey, she claimed Kaylee had been kidnapped by a babysitter named Zanny the Nanny. Despite her daughter's disappearance, Casey was seen partying and entering a hot body contest just days later. Round 2. Forensic evidence takes center stage. During the investigation, what suspicious item did police discover in the trunk of Casey Anthony's car? Was it A, a child's blanket and doll, B, a strand of Kaylee's hair and traces of decomposition, C, a missing person flyer with fake handwriting, or D, Kaylee's shoe and a gas can? Clue. No one wanted to believe what seemed unimaginable. The answer is B, a strand of Kaylee's hair and traces of decomposition. The facts are as follows. Forensic experts detected a chemical signature consistent with human decomposition in the car's trunk. A single hair from the trunk matched Kaylee's DNA and showed signs of post-mortem root banding. Despite the scientific evidence, defense attorneys argued the smell came from old garbage, not a body. Round 3. The search ends with a devastating discovery. What key discovery was found in the wooded area near the Anthony home, ultimately confirming Kaylee's fate? Was it A, Kaylee's shoes and clothing, B, a backpack containing her birth certificate, C, a set of remains wrapped in a blanket and duct tape, or D, a neighbor's stolen shovel? Clue. What investigators found left no room for doubt. The answer is C, a set of remains wrapped in a blanket and duct tape. The facts are as follows. Kaylee's remains were found inside a laundry bag, along with duct tape still attached. A utilities worker discovered the remains after stepping off the roadway to relieve himself. The location was less than half a mile from the Anthony home. This proximity became one of the prosecution's strongest narrative points, arguing the disposal site indicated familiarity and opportunity. Round 4. Digital footprints can be as revealing as physical ones. Which internet search allegedly made on the Anthony family computer became a major point of debate during the trial? Was it A, how to poison a child, B, neck-breaking accidents, C, chloroform, or D, missing toddler protocols? Clue: a troubling search that helped prosecutors form their argument. The answer is C, chloroform. These are the facts. Early reports claimed there were over 80 Google searches for chloroform on the Anthony computer. Casey's defense argued that her father, George, could have made the search. Another search for foolproof suffocation surfaced years after the trial. Shockingly, it was traced back to a time Casey was confirmed to be home alone, reviving lingering public suspicion long after the verdict. Round 5. The trial's most shocking claim takes the stand. What explanation did Casey's defense team offer to account for Kaylee's death during the trial? Was it A, she wandered off and drowned in a retention pond? B, she choked on food while unattended? C, she fell down the stairs while George was watching her? Or D, she accidentally drowned in the family pool? Clue: the defense tried to make their story float above the rest. The answer is D. She accidentally drowned in the family pool. These are the facts. The defense argued that Kaylee drowned and George Anthony helped cover it up out of panic. The defense portrayed Casey as a lifelong victim of abuse to explain her bizarre behavior. Despite the explosive accusations, George Anthony was never charged with any crime. His testimony remained one of the trial's most scrutinized and one of the most divisive among true crime followers to this day. Round 6. We begin with one of the most iconic trials in American history. Which piece of physical evidence found at the crime scene became one of the most infamous elements of the O.J. Simpson case? Was it A, a broken watch covered in blood, B, a single black leather glove, C, a discarded ski mask, or D, a blood-stained jacket? Clue: if it doesn't fit, the line that turned evidence into spectacle. The answer is B, a single black leather glove. These are the facts. A second matching glove was found at O.J. Simpson's estate, linking both locations. The glove was soaked in blood from multiple sources, according to early forensic tests. During the trial, Simpson dramatically tried the glove on, and it appeared too small. Whether it truly didn't fit or had shrunk from moisture became an argument that split the country and influenced the jury's doubts. Round 7. The forensic battle that defined the trial. Which piece of forensic evidence became one of the most hotly contested items during the O.J. Simpson trial? Was it A, blood drops on the Bronco, B, the blood evidence overall, C, the crime scene footprints, or D, the hair and fiber samples? Clue: one detail had the courtroom trying to trace the truth. The answer is B, the blood evidence overall. These are the facts. Prosecutors claimed the blood evidence tied O.J. directly to the scene through DNA. Some blood samples were collected, stored, and transported in ways that violated standard protocols. A vial of O.J.'s reference blood was found with a small amount missing. The defense suggested that the missing portion could have been used to plant evidence, a theory that, while never proven, created enormous courtroom drama. Round 8. The courtroom turns emotional. Which key witness testified that O.J. Simpson had previously been violent toward Nicole Brown Simpson? Was it A, a former neighbor, B, O.J.'s personal trainer, C, Kato Kalin, or D, Nicole's sister, Denise Brown? Clue: their account added heavy emotional weight to the trial. The answer is D, Nicole's sister, Denise Brown. The facts are as follows. Denise Brown described multiple incidents where Nicole feared for her life. 911 tapes of Nicole's terrified calls were played for the jury. The defense argued the testimony was emotional but not directly connected to the murders. Round 9. When a single testimony shakes an entire case, what controversial action did LAPD detective Mark Furman take that later damaged the prosecution's credibility? Was it A, he lost key pieces of evidence, B, he admitted to altering his original police report, C, he was caught lying about using racial slurs, or D, he refused to testify about the glove discovery? Clue: a hidden bias in the messenger can shake the courtroom. The answer is C. He was caught lying about using racial slurs. The facts are as follows. Furman denied ever using racial slurs. Then tapes surfaced proving otherwise. The defense seized on the tapes to support their theory of a police setup. Furman later pleaded no contest to perjury. That plea became one of the most explosive aftershocks of the trial, reshaping public perception of the investigators involved. Round 10. Science took center stage in a case that changed forensics forever. DNA evidence in the O.J. Simpson case was considered groundbreaking because it A, used brand new fingerprint technology, B, was the first major case to rely heavily on DNA testing, C, proved that blood analysis was unreliable, or D, eliminated all other suspects entirely. Clue: when science becomes part of the drama, procedure matters as much as the sample. The answer is B. It was the first major case to rely heavily on DNA testing. Here are the facts. The O.J. trial introduced millions of Americans to DNA evidence in a criminal case. Defense attorneys attacked chain of custody and lab procedures to undermine the DNA's impact. Despite strong DNA matches, jurors were swayed more by credibility and reasonable doubt than by the lab reports alone. Round 11. We begin the 5-round segment on the Hollywood tragedy of Robert Blake and Bonnie Lee Bakley. Where was Bonnie Lee Bakley fatally shot after her dinner with Robert Blake? Was it A, inside Vitello's restaurant, B, on the 101 freeway off-ramp, C, in Blake's parked car, or D, at their Studio City home? Clue: a crime scene steps away from a crowded restaurant. The answer is C, in Blake's parked car. The car was a black 1991 Dodge Stealth, which Blake had parked on a dark side street around the corner from Vitello's, a detail the prosecution used to cast doubt on his concern for his wife's safety. The facts are before us. The pistol used to kill Bakley was a vintage German Walther P38. Investigators found it discarded in a dumpster over 200 yards from where the shooting took place, but Blake claimed it was not his gun. The prosecution heavily relied on the testimony of stuntmen who claimed Blake attempted to solicit them for murder. However, the defense successfully painted them as unreliable, financially motivated witnesses due to their history of drug use. The contrast between the glamorous life of a Hollywood actor and the lurid, chaotic background of his wife became the defining public narrative of the case. Round 12, Blake's alibi. What was Blake's reason for leaving Bakley in the car to go back to the restaurant? Was it A, to retrieve a wallet, B, to get a glass of water, C, to retrieve a handgun, or D, to pay the bill? Clue: the actor's TV role was armed. His alibi was an errand. The answer is C, to retrieve a handgun. Blake's story was that he left his wife in the car, returned to the restaurant, and when he came back, she had been shot. This brief window of separation, returning for a gun, was the foundation of his defense. Fun facts: Bonnie Lee Bakley initially claimed Christian Brando, Marlon Brando's son, was the father of her baby Rose. A DNA test, however, proved Robert Blake was the father, a paternity surprise that led directly to their tumultuous and short-lived marriage. The defense argued the traces of gunshot residue on Blake's hands were too minimal to be the shooter. Blake's famous TV show where he played a tough guy detective was Beretta. This made the public's perception of him as a tough guy actor collide violently with his real-life role as a murder defendant. Round 13. No more clues from this point on. What was the final outcome against Blake in the civil wrongful death lawsuit? Was it A, case was dismissed, B, found liable for Bakley's death, C, found not liable, or D, jury deadlocked? The answer is B, found liable for Bakley's death. Fun facts: before his own trial, Blake had earned critical acclaim for playing Perry Smith, one of the real-life killers at the center of Truman Capote's In Cold Blood. This chilling irony was not lost on the media during his murder trial. Bakley had a notorious past, often using various aliases to con men out of money. The defense used this history to suggest that any one of Bakley's many enemies could have been the killer, not Blake. Blake's longtime bodyguard, Earl Caldwell, was also arrested on conspiracy charges. However, a pretrial judge later dismissed those charges, removing a potential link in the prosecution's theory of a murder plot. Round 14. What was found on the blade of a knife at Blake's house that was not the murder weapon? Was it A, Blake's fingerprints, B, Bakley's fingerprints, C, Bakley's blood, or D, no forensic evidence? The answer is C, Bakley's blood. Detectives found a spot of Bakley's blood on a kitchen knife in Blake's home. The prosecution argued this suggested a plot or a previous attempt to harm her, but the defense successfully disputed the contamination and reliability of the small sample. Fun facts: Blake was initially arrested for the murder 11 months after the shooting. The defense suggested Bakley was killed by one of her former lovers, potentially Christian Brando. After his acquittal, Blake was publicly ridiculed for his eccentric courtroom behavior. Round 15. The two Hollywood stuntmen who testified against Blake claimed he offered them what unusual payment for killing Bonnie Lee Bakley? Was it A, a role in his next film, B, $100,000 in cash, C, a future profit share on a TV show, or D, a percentage of his pension? The answer is C, a future profit share on a TV show. Fun facts: both stuntmen were former friends of Blake and struggled with drug use, which the defense used to attack their credibility. The murder weapon's serial number was filed off, making it impossible to trace its ownership to Robert Blake. Blake was acquitted of all criminal charges, but the civil court found him liable and ordered him to pay over $30 million in damages. Round 16. We move to Perugia, Italy, and the case of Amanda Knox, tried and acquitted for the murder of her roommate. The victim in the Amanda Knox case was in Italy for what kind of educational program? Was it A, a language immersion program, B, a study abroad program, C, a teaching English internship, or D, a volunteer restoration project? The answer is B, a study abroad program. Fun facts. A key piece of DNA evidence was a trace of Knox's DNA found on the blade of a kitchen knife at her boyfriend's apartment. The only person conclusively convicted in the case is Rudy Goudet, an Ivorian man whose DNA was found at the scene. He was convicted of sexual assault and murder in a separate trial and is the sole individual who remains imprisoned for the crime. The case went through 4 separate trials and appeals over nearly 8 years before Knox was definitively acquitted by Italy's highest court. Round 17. What was the full name of Amanda Knox's then boyfriend who was also arrested, convicted, and later fully acquitted? Was it A, Valentino Sollecito, B, Raffaele Sollecito, C, Domenico Nardelli, or D, Giovanni Fico? The answer is B, Raffaele Sollecito. Fun facts. Sollecito's initial 25-year sentence came just days after Knox received her 26-year sentence in 2009. Sollecito initially testified that he could not remember if Knox was at his apartment the night of the murder, creating early confusion. Raffaele Sollecito is the son of a prominent cardiologist in Italy, which raised public suspicion of undue influence in the defense. Round 18. Amanda Knox served time in jail for what separate, lesser charge, even after her full acquittal for murder? Was it A, obstruction of justice, B, tampering with evidence, C, calumny, slander, or D, illegal drug use? The answer is C, calumny, slander. Fun facts. During an early interrogation, Knox implicated her former boss, Patrick Lumumba, as the killer. Though Lumumba was quickly cleared, Knox was convicted of calumny, false accusation, or slander, a charge that was upheld and for which she served time. Knox claimed her false confession and accusation against Lumumba were coerced by police manipulation during a stressful all-night interrogation without a lawyer. Meredith Kircher was found stabbed to death in the bedroom of her Perugia apartment on November 2nd, 2007. Round 19. Knox and Sollecito initially claimed they spent the evening of the murder doing what common activity? Was it A, attending a university party, B, grocery shopping and cooking, C, watching a movie at Sollecito's apartment, or D, studying at a local cafe? The answer is C, watching a movie at Sollecito's apartment. Fun facts. The couple claimed they were at Sollecito's apartment smoking marijuana, watching the French film Amélie, and having sex. This alibi was simple, but inconsistencies in Sollecito's early statements about that night were exploited by the prosecution. The Italian Supreme Court's final acquittal cited stunning flaws in the investigation and scientific errors in the DNA evidence. Upon her final acquittal, Knox immediately returned to her hometown of Seattle, Washington. Round 20. Italy's Supreme Court of Cassation ultimately acquitted Knox due to what flaw in the prosecution's case? Was it A, alibi proven by cell records, B, failure to prove motive, C, lack of conclusive evidence, or D, confession ruled inadmissible? The answer is C, lack of conclusive evidence. Fun facts. The only person conclusively convicted in the murder of Meredith Kircher, Rudy Gaudet, was tried separately in a fast-track process. Gaudet, whose DNA was found at the crime scene and inside the victim, was the only individual whose guilt was definitively established. Knox was fully exonerated in 2015, 8 years after the murder, a process that involved 4 separate trials and appeals. The final, powerful ruling from Italy's highest court was highly critical of the entire investigation, concluding that the prosecution's theory was not supported by any scientifically solid proof. Round 21. How old was Trayvon Martin when he was fatally shot by George Zimmerman? Was it A, 15 years old, B, 17 years old, C, 19 years old, or D, 21 years old? The answer is B, 17 years old. These are some facts. Martin was a junior in high school visiting his father's fiancée in the Sanford, Florida neighborhood where the shooting occurred, which was overseen by Zimmerman's Neighborhood Watch. Florida's Stand Your Ground law allows an individual to use deadly force without a duty to retreat if they reasonably believe it is necessary to prevent death or great bodily harm. The only item Trayvon Martin had with him was a bag of candy and a can of iced tea, often referred to as a Skittles and a can of Arizona. Round 22. Who did George Zimmerman claim was screaming for help in the background of the 911 tape? Was it A, a neighbor reporting the fight, B, the deceased, Trayvon Martin, C, himself, George Zimmerman, or D, an unidentified witness? The answer is C, himself, George Zimmerman. The facts. In a dramatic moment of the trial, both mothers gave conflicting emotional testimony, each claiming to recognize her son's voice in the desperate cries for help recorded on the neighbor's 911 call. A forensic expert testified that computerized analysis showed the voice was unlikely to be George Zimmerman's. Before the shooting, Zimmerman used a racial slur. The prosecution used Zimmerman's unedited audio recordings to argue that he pursued Martin with malice and ill will, an element of the second-degree murder charge. Round 23. What was the final instruction the police dispatcher gave Zimmerman before he engaged with Trayvon Martin? Was it A, to stay in his vehicle, B, to follow at a safe distance, C, to fire a warning shot, or D, to call back with a license plate number? The answer is A, to stay in his vehicle. Fun facts. The decision not to immediately charge Zimmerman caused national outrage. Only after weeks of highly publicized protest and the appointment of a special prosecutor was Zimmerman finally arrested and charged with second-degree murder. The pistol used in the shooting was legally owned by Zimmerman. The setting for the controversial shooting was a gated community with a history of crime, which Zimmerman claimed justified his vigilance as a neighborhood watch volunteer. Round 24. Which injury sustained by Zimmerman was key to his claim that his life was in danger? Was it A, a dislocated shoulder, B, lacerations to the back of his head, C, a fractured arm, or D, severe chest bruising? The answer is B, lacerations to the back of his head. Fun facts. Zimmerman's self-defense claim hinged on his assertion that Trayvon Martin was pounding his head into the concrete sidewalk. Martin's autopsy report noted broken skin on his knuckles, suggesting he was also involved in the physical struggle. The lead police investigator on the case initially recommended that George Zimmerman be charged with manslaughter, but he was overruled by his superiors. Round 25. What federal agency investigated Zimmerman after his acquittal for potential civil rights violations? Was it A, the FBI, B, the Department of Justice, C, Homeland Security, or D, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms? The answer is B, the Department of Justice, or DOJ. Fun facts. Federal investigators concluded there was insufficient evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Zimmerman violated federal hate crime statutes. The jury, composed of 6 women, considered the charges of second-degree murder and the lesser charge of manslaughter before reaching their verdict after less than 2 full days of deliberation. The highly publicized trial was followed by continued legal troubles for Zimmerman, including a road rage shooting where he was the target and several high-profile domestic disputes, none of which resulted in a conviction. All right, that's it. Round 25 is done, and this 25-minute true crime deep dive is officially complete. If your feet are still moving, great job. If your head is spinning from all those facts, that's exactly the point. We started with some public opinion numbers. Did the evidence on Casey Anthony push you past 70% certainty? Did the facts on George Zimmerman or Robert Blake move the needle for you? These cases are still discussed for a reason. The answers are never simple. But what is simple is that you crushed this workout. Take a deep breath, grab some water, and hit the cool down button. From all of us at Treadmill Trivia, stay curious, and we'll see you next time.